Okay, so in previous videos, you've seen how to take an array of data and transform that array into a frequency distribution. Well, there are going to be a number of different times when you may want to visualize that data in a different way. And so in this video, what I want to talk about is how to graph a frequency distribution and a special kind of graph called a histogram. And histograms are used for ordinal, interval, and ratio level data, primarily interval and ratio. So here's your data. And let's say that we're going to have, we'll start with an example of a frequency distribution for some variable called x. And we've got this frequency distribution. X takes on values, let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's say that x has a frequency distribution that looks like this, where there's 1 0 in the data. There are 2 1s, 2 values of 1, 2 values of 2, 3 values of 3, and there's 1 4 in the data as well. So we can get our sample size here by adding up the frequencies. So 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 2 is 5, plus 3 is 8, plus 1 is 9. And we see we've got a sample size of 9 here, 9 observations on this variable x that range in value from 0 to 4. Okay, so now we want to graph this, and we want to get an idea of what this looks like if we were to visualize this in a different way. And so I'm going to draw a graph here. And on the y-axis, we're going to have our frequencies. Okay, and we can see that the frequencies, looking at this column here, they range in value from 1 to 3. So we'll go ahead and put the 0 down here at the corner in the origin. And then we'll have a 1, a 2, and a 3 going up the y-axis. Now on the x-axis, we'll have the values of the variable x. And those range in value from 0 to 4, so we'll go from the smallest, 0 on the left, and we'll go to 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll place little tick marks here. And so now we've got our graph prepared. Now, to create our histogram, what we need to do is create vertical bars at each value of x that represent the frequency. So the height of the bar relates to the frequency of the observation. So there's one value of 0 in our data. The value on x of 0 has a frequency of 1, and so we'll create a bar at 0 that goes up to 1. Now for the value of 1, there are 2 observations in our data, and so we'll make a bar that goes up to number 2, do a frequency of 2, and then for the x value of 2, there are also 2 observations in the data, so we'll create another bar at 2 that goes up to 2. For the x value of 3, there are 3 observations in our data, so we'll draw a bar that goes up to 3, and then the x value of 4 only occurs once in the data set, so here we go up to 1, and then we create a bar. And this is an example of a histogram where we now see the same information that's communicated in this frequency distribution table, but it's communicated using a graph. And we can very quickly see from looking at this graph that the most commonly occurring value for x in our data is 3, and that the least commonly occurring values in our data set are 0 and 1, and those occur one time each. Now, an important thing that you'll notice here is that there are no gaps between the bars. Okay, and this is kind of important for histograms. It seems to be convention that when you draw a histogram, because the idea is that this variable x, the underlying distribution ranges from 0 to 4, and it could, in theory, probably be any value in here. It could be 0.5, 1.5, 2.3, 3.4, whatever, between 0 and 4, that there shouldn't be any gaps between these bars. So occasionally you'll see charts where there are gaps between the bars, and technically there are people, there are analysts who would say that these aren't histograms because there are gaps in the bars. The information is generally the same, but the idea is that with a histogram you'll push the bars together so you get some sort of continuous underlying distribution represented by this graph. So just so that you're aware, there are some people who will make those arguments, and they'll differentiate between histograms where there are no gaps between the bars and standard bar charts where there are gaps between the bars. But this is an example of taking a frequency distribution and turning it into a histogram.